Welcome to Unbossed. We are so glad that you are here. And today, co-hosting with me is none other than Dan Evans. And Dan is a TYT contributor among a whole host of other things. How are you doing today?
Always an honor to be with you, Senator. The stories we have are definitely quite a lot to get through, but I'm excited to do it.
Yeah, I am too, and they are a lot. So Dan and I, today we're gonna cover a traffic earthquake that has left thousands dead in Turkey. The DNC Resolutions Committee claims the neoliberal title today. And later in the show, FTX is asking for some cash back from his donors. That's Sam Bankman-Fried. Yeah, his group. They're asking for money back from their donors. We will see if the donors will return that money. Now, don't you forget to subscribe. If you are not a subscriber, please subscribe to Unbossed, subscribe to the TYT network, become a member, share this stream, and share some love in the comments, which you know is my absolute favorite time of the show. So Dan and I will start with what is happening in Turkey and also Syria. This devastation it just makes your heart ache. Take a look.
Günlük ışıkları.
And that is just a snippet of what is happening in that region of the world. A lot of chaos, a lot of tragic devastation caused by these earthquakes. And here is what we know at this moment. A 7.8 magnitude earthquake in southern Turkey early on Monday killed more than 2,600 people across the country and in neighboring Syria. Officials said as rescuers search flattened buildings in frigid weather for survivors. Rescue efforts are ongoing and the number of people killed, injured, and displaced is unfortunately set to climb. This reporting is coming from the Washington Post. The death toll in the rebel-held northwestern Syria is at 570, according to representatives of the Syrian Civil Defense, an aid group that works in areas outside government control. That toll is also expected to unfortunately rise. More than 1,000 civilians were injured, with hundreds trapped under rubble and dozens of buildings collapsed, the group said. Let's put up a map showing the affected areas in the region, and as you can see, where the epicenter is and all the areas that have been impacted by this. And both nations are calling for urgent help, and that comes of no surprise when you have something of this magnitude happen anywhere in the world. The areas that are the most impacted certainly need help from the world. The Turkish government has issued a level 4 alarm calling for international assistance. In Syria, there is an urgent need for heavy machines to remove debris, cash distribution tents and isolation sheets, heating materials and emergency food, as well as medicines and fuel for hospitals. Hospitals urgently require medical material, including serums, gauze, bandages, painkillers, medical plaster, and blood bags. Other urgent needs include fuel for generators and heating, as well as, unfortunately, burial bags. And here are just some of the organizations that are assisting right now at this moment. They are providing relief for Turkey and Syria, and that is the International Medical Corps, the British Red Cross, the International Blue Crescent Relief and Development Foundation, and the Union of Medical Care and Relief Organizations. Dan, this is very heartbreaking.
Yeah, it's really hard to see. I was reading just before coming on that the United States is about to send firefighters from Virginia and Los Angeles as well to address the situation. And definitely what I'm gonna be looking at is what you get, unfortunately, which is infrastructure projects end up like infrastructure collapsed and destroyed during these natural disasters, oftentimes it takes a while for those to get built back up. And usually there's a power dynamic and a class dynamic in which areas or which people get their infrastructure built back first. So of course my heart goes out to everyone who is in Turkey and Syria affected by that, especially in Syria, given the unique war situation there. So I just urge everyone watching to just like keep watching closely and help however you can.
Yeah, please do. And there's something that we all can do. Our thoughts and prayers, obviously, I think is very important, but making sure if there's opportunity to donate to some of the organizations that are there providing relief, please do so. And very glad that the United States is sending help their way. And I gotta imagine more and more nations will step up, because if it was us, we want people to send our people some relief as well. So we will definitely keep you posted on this and keep an eye on this. It's money. And the DNC Resolution Committee has me saying, WTF, neoliberals.
We will now kneel.
Miss Cinema, no.
You have a problem figuring out whether you're for me or Trump, and you ain't black.
Oh, my people, as in my people of the DNC. A Democratic National Committee panel on Thursday refused to allow a vote on a resolution aimed at banning dark money from the party's primary process. Let's put up this tweet from Our Revolution. Today, despite claiming to be against dark money, the DNC Resolution Committee refused. Capitalize that, they already did it for me. They just need to underline it, bold it, underscore it, put an exclamation point and a message in a bottle on a train. Refused to allow a vote on our resolution to ban dark money from primaries. So we're taking the resolution to the full floor. Now we know that dark money refers to spending whose sources isn't disclosed and is often untraceable. The trail of dark money has certainly shaken up many an election and many issues too that will have impacts on the material conditions of the people in the communities where either those people are running or that issue is meant to penetrate. This is the second time the resolution committee blocked this proposal, not even allowing it to be voted upon. Let's just go ahead and have an up and down vote. What are they afraid of? So led by Nevada Democratic Party Chair Judith Whitmer, the resolution would have prohibited dark money funding during any and all Democratic primary elections. Keyword primary election, and establish procedures for the investigation of dark money used by candidate committees, as well as possible disciplinary actions. Now, this reporting is coming from Common Dreams. Thank you, Jake Johnson. If you had nothing to hide, why would the DNC be afraid of doing something like this? Many people in this country, regardless of their political affiliation, they understand the scourge of dark money in politics, and they want a more open process. Now, obviously, we shouldn't let the Republicans off the hook, but here the Democrats are the ones claiming they don't like dark money, but at the same time refuse to let this resolution come to the resolution committee. They refuse to let it even come to the floor for a vote at all. And obviously this has sparked outrage from progressive DNC members, others who backed the proposal. Let's take a look at this. Groundhog Day, DNC resolution committee considers a resolution to ban dark money in primaries, just like on summer of 2022. I'm old enough to remember that. Not a single person on the committee dares move to even put it for a vote, just like the summer of 2022. I remember that. Thanks, Nevada Dem Chair Judith Whitmer, for trying. Yes. Nevada Democratic Party Chair Judith Whitmer weighed in on this in an interview with Jake Johnson of Common Dreams, and she put out, our party and our country need strong Democratic candidates willing to speak truth to power, but when their messages can be drowned out in a flood of untraceable expenditures, many candidates are questioning why they should even run. Restoring faith in our democracy has never been more urgent, and that all important work should start in our own primary elections. Amen to that, Chairwoman Judith Whitmer. And when asked, I myself stated the following: dark money taints the will of the people of these communities, because dark money is doing the bidding of the elites and the oligarchs who don't give a damn about the conditions people are living in. The Democratic Party, by not allowing this resolution to come to the floor, is complicit in the railroading of democracy itself. Yeah, I said it and I stand behind that. And here's a reminder that supporters of the ban cited the torrent of dark money that poured into Democratic primary races across the country this year in an effort to defeat progressive candidates and bolster powerful incumbents, a strategy that in a number of high-profile cases did in fact succeed. And when we're talking about this year, we're really talking about things that happened last year and the year before that. We just started with 2023, but I'm sure that all of you get the picture of what is happening in this country when money does in fact have more speech than Big Mama and Big Papa. The proposed dark money ban path forward is uncertain, but it is very clear, Dan, that the fight is not over.
Yeah, one of the parts that you highlighted early on that I want to underscore for folks is that this only covers the primary process. So there's oftentimes this, bad faith argument that's put forward that says, hey, you don't want to unilaterally disarm. You don't want to, as the Democrats, not accept this bucket loads of dark money that people are always getting when the Republicans are not going to do that. This is not saying that. This is just about the primaries. So I again present your question, Senator Turner. What is there to hide, especially in a time when trust in politicians in general is an all-time low? The Democratic Party should be looking internally towards its chairs who are trying to meet that need and push forward and say, one way we can win back a little bit of trust with people, in addition to passing material benefits that help the working class and things that people can see. But one way we can really help reach out to people is to show that we have nothing to hide. These are the people who are giving us money. This is how much money they're giving us. And this is how I feel that donation, impacts my policies, or this is how that donation does not impact my policies. There's so many opportunities for transparency, so it should tell you something that the Democratic Party, not once, not twice, and probably many more times in the future, keeps refusing to ban dark money from its own internal processes.
Yeah, that's right, Dan. And the Democratic Party should see this very much as an opportunity and not as a threat, especially in primaries. And for progressives like myself who really support this proposal, we're very careful. Tactically, we understand in the general, even though I wish dark money would go away altogether, whether it's primary or general, but we understand that tactically in a general election, when a Democrat is up against a Republican, that there needs to be a way for Democrats to be able to raise that money. Now, in a perfect world, a perfect democracy, or getting closer to it, we want both parties to say no to dark money. Citizens United is a problem, and there are groups out there who fight against Citizens United and trying to get us on a more level playing field altogether. Until then, though, having the Democratic Party in primaries not put their bodies on the scale for the elites and the oligarchs would have been a great place to start. And then let us remind you, though, the troubles that dark money has caused. Again, this is not new, what Dan and I are talking to you about today. Let's put up the Intercept headline. Rep. Henry Kolar gets boost from dark money group launched by his close aide. The Voter Education Foundation, linked to abortion ban advocates, sponsor ads against the conservative Democrats' primary challenger, and that was Jessica Cisneros. Those of you who are in Texas and those of you who may remember this race, we know that these groups weighed in on that. Jessica had a very good chance of winning this race until that dark money started pouring in. And then you guys may remember this. I know I do. Ohio's 11th congressional district, and we're talking about the Ohio underscored, bolded, underlined it. 11th congressional district race turns negative in final days as outside money ramps up. No one is left scathed. Very few people, especially those of us who are progressive freedom fighters, they come in after us. And it's really ironic how the Democrats come harder at progressive Democrats than they do even against Republicans. Dan, any thoughts about that? What happened to Jessica? Not just Jessica, me and others, and how this dark money really does take away. My primary concern here is that the voice of the people in those communities, that voice is taken away by outside people coming in here who really don't care about the troubles that those communities or the needs that those communities may have.
Yeah, absolutely. And oftentimes it's acting in bad faith. I mean, we all know what certain major dark money groups said about you in bad faith. And I had the pleasure of speaking about to Jessica Cisneros as well about how, that was her second time running. She had really built a great ground game when there was she was running at that point, but you had the issue where, Henry Cuellar came in, he had his big Democratic Party donors who were behind him. And with that infrastructure, it has exactly what you're saying. It has that effect where the regular people, the voters, the person who's like door you're knocking on, my old favorite pre-COVID favorite part of politics is just canvassing and talking to people who may have R's by their name, and by the end of that conversation, they're a D. That's great stuff. That's real politics. This money wipes that out. This money cancels out those people's voices, and that's the most infuriating thing, because when you do canvass, there is so much that we can do together. You really see that opportunity, and then big money comes in and it's back to politics as usual.
Yeah, it definitely manipulates and taints the entire process by, taking over airwaves with negativity and stuff that really has no bearing directly on the needs of the people. I know in the 11th congressional district, having 50% of our children living in poverty, the need for universal health care as we need all across this country, jobs, all of that stuff got drowned out by these dark money groups who wanted to be able to own, because that's what this comes down to. They want to be able to own the people who get these seats. And it's very unfortunate, especially in a primary. And the cherry on the top, Democrats love to use hot issues to make a quick buck, but then don't do anything about those issues. So this headline, Democrats use abortion rights to fundraise, but don't fight to protect those rights. Some of us are old enough to remember all that fundraising that went on once the Supreme Court took away Roe v. Wade. And in Texas in particular, there was an opportunity to have a pro-choice candidate win in Jessica, but instead leaders like Nancy Pelosi and Jim Clyburn and others sided with Cuellar against this young woman, and on top of that, then had the nerve to fundraise with their folks about Roe v. Wade. The irony cannot be lost. America, come on now, we got to do something about this and not continue to be complicit in our own demise. This stuff is just absolutely, it makes you shake your head really hard.
If I could say one last thing too,
sure.
To me, this is all within the context of the Democratic National Committee deciding to move South Carolina up ahead, when they could have chosen more diverse states like Nevada or Michigan, like states where someone other than Jim Clyburn basically puts their thumb on the scales for whoever wins. But like, of course, the Iowa, New Hampshire primaries, I was a producer at TYT during those primaries. It was a mess. It was a ridiculous situation. You had
you
had one of Buttigieg's companies somehow involved in the Iowa results. It was a big mess. We don't want to go back to that system, but okay, if we're talking about replacing systems, the Democratic National Committee is clearly down to make changes for what it feels like, what they feel like will yield better results for better candidates. But of course, what they think are better candidates is very out of tune with what the grassroots thinks. And every time you get warriors like you going to these state meetings and whole Democratic National Committee meetings, the same thing happens. You're just brushed aside as if you're the college students touring for the first time, trying to get selfies with all the politicians. Like, it's ridiculous, and it's indicative of efforts that need to be had inside the Democratic Party, but also efforts that need to happen outside of the Democratic Party to pressure them and show them that there is no other choice but listening to the grassroots activists.
Ultimately, it's coming down to that, and that's why the majority of the voters don't subscribe to either one of these parties, Dan. They tired of the foolishness and the okey doke. They see right through it, but especially younger voters. So we're gonna keep you posted on this. So let's get to FTX. Donations are returned. Sam Bankman-Fried is at it again, this time pleading for politicians to return their donations. Take a look at this headline. FTX asked politicians who received Bankman-Fried's donations to return the money. The confidential letter, air quotes in that, escalate a fight over what could be $93 million in campaign contributions. So here are the details. In the confidential messages sent to numerous political figures and action groups, FTX and its debtors are backing up their demand for the return of money donated by Bankman-Fried prior to the company's bankruptcy in November, with the threat of legal action. Y'all gonna give us back our money, or we are going to sue you. Thank you, Guardian, for laying this out here for us. And any politician or group that does not make a voluntary refund, they just might be sued. Yet experts say recovering payments to politicians and charities are likely to be one of the easier parts of the bankruptcy process for FTX. FTX. Let's look at this. Beto O'Rourke, a Democratic former candidate in the US Senate and gubernatorial races in Texas, sent back a check for $1 million from Bankman-Fried in November, 1 week before FTX imploded. $1 million. Yeah, this is how deep this dude was getting into these races all across the country. And now remember, Bankman-Fried pleaded not guilty to criminal charges that he defrauded investors in FTX. Why? Because Bankman-Fried and other members of FTX leadership donated large sums to charities, endowing the FTX Foundation and FTX Future Fund to promote his interests. Bankman-Fried and his colleagues siphoned off billions of dollars in customer funds from FTX to spend on luxury properties, other investments, and yes, you got it, political contributions. Let's take a look at this. Here are some of Bankman's top PAC contributions. So we got Protect Our Future PAC, $27 million. House Majority PAC, that is when the Democrats were in control. Let's be very clear. Super PAC supporting House Democrats, $6 million. GMI PAC Incorporated, a group sponsoring, supporting crypto-friendly candidates, $2 million. American United Super PAC supporting Latino House candidates, and SMP Super PAC supporting Senate Democrats. There you got it, folks. All up in there. And they, one of these PACs definitely supported the person that ran against me, Dan, in my race, the last race. Yeah, your thoughts?
I love the angle with the FTX Sam Bankman-Fried story that, outsiders say, oh, he was this big donor for the Democratic Party, and so therefore he's a big Democrat or whatever. You hear the guy speak, he sounds like a conservative pundit talking about Democrats and woke stuff, right? Like, it's not very convincing, and it kind of goes to show this. He calls it effective altruism. I kind of call it white man's burden 2.0 for the 21st century, because it's this idea that, okay, I as a benevolent rich person, I'm going to get as much money as I can and then spend it where I best see fit. And of course, if this was like an actual political person, then there are many better places outside the political system, let's say for environmental justice, climate change, world hunger, things where your money could better off be spent. But no, he went to the Democrats thinking that, okay, that's going to be the better idea. And the ending result of that is Sam Bankman-Fried, I mean, all those people, all those different groups you're talking about, willingly taking those money, because they always take money from wealthy people all the time. So this is another example, because we were just talking about it before, where at the end of the day, the Democrats need to get out of this habit of taking wide, like huge amounts of money from random, generous mega donors, because usually it comes with some sort of like thing in return. This time it's a bounce check. So maybe they'll learn their lesson. They won't learn their lesson.
Oh, Dan, they will not learn their lesson. But you're absolutely right. And again, to the constituents, to the people who live in these communities, it is a disservice to Big Mama, Big Papa, and their children and their children's children, because it gives outside voice to people with a lot of money. And then the point that this benevolent, mega donor is going to decide where this money goes. And what he's going to strategically do is pick the people who will bend policy to his favor. I mean, the person that I ran against was actually on committees that oversaw cryptocurrency. I mean, follow the money. And it's not just in Ohio 11th, it happens all over the country. So the whole notion of representative democracy, hell, is being tainted. We have a problem in the United States of America. And so for all the nice things that we want, all of the ways that we want to change material conditions, all of those things will be thwarted if in fact we do not elect people to office who don't have to answer to owner donors. This is a challenge, America, and we need to deal with that no matter what side of the political ideological spectrum we are on. Let's do this. We're gonna keep pushing. Let's take some time now. Dan, we're gonna look at some of the viewer comments right now. See what the people got to say about what's happening in the world. So let's see. Oh, but before I get to that, I want to remind folks that the watch list comes on immediately after our show, a new time on TYT. So you want to be right there with JR on the watch list right after this. So just go ahead and stay tuned. Don't even go anywhere. And then become a member of TYT. We got a spin the wheel promotion going. So spin that wheel, sign up, spin the wheel, become an annual TYT member. Do that thing, land on the prize, get an email confirmation, and then we will send you that prize. You do want to do that. And then the State of the Union on February the 7th. You know, the president will be given the State of the Union. That's tomorrow night, and TYT will be your #1 source for progressive coverage. So you can tune in to that on tomorrow night with Anna and Jink at 8:30 p.m. ET time and 5:30 p.m. PT time. You want to do that. Now to the comments. Drunk Dragon. It's a dantastic Monday here on Unbossed. You better.
We're bringing it back. Hell yeah.
Hell yeah. And on Twitch, Danielle. Hi, Danielle. Nina, you are my shero with exclamation points. You give me so much hope for our future. We need you in 2024. There is no one we trust more. It's always great to see you too, Dan. Love you both and all of my TYT fam. Thank you, Daniela. Oh my God, that is such a wonderful thing to say about both of us and about the network. We're sending that love right back to you. And on YouTube Super Chat, Pebbles. Hi, Nina and Dan, much love. Hello, Pebbles, we sending all that love back. And thanks to all of you for your comments, and thank you all for your support of Unbossed and the TYT network. We couldn't do what we do without you, boo. You know I say that all the time. Now, as the war in Ukraine rages on, President Lula of Brazil is offering a solution that has not often been discussed. Watch this.
O Brasil não quer ter qualquer participação, mesmo que indireta, porque eu acho que nesse instante do mundo nós deveríamos estar procurando quem é que pode ajudar a encontrar a paz entre Rússia e Ucrânia. Nós precisamos encontrar alguém, porque até agora a palavra paz é muito pouco utilizada.
What you just watched was President Lula laying down the truth when it comes to the war in the Ukraine. Peace over more weapons. Peace over more weapons. You better talk about that, President Lula. And here's some context to what Lula was addressing specifically. This headline, Lula rejects German chancellor's plea for Brazilian weapons for Ukraine. Brazil would not send over to Ukraine the desired parts of the German-made Gepard air defense tank and no ammunition either. Lula declares, quote, Brazil has no interest in handing over munitions that can be used in the war between Ukraine and Russia. We are a country committed to peace. Yes, baby. Go ahead, President Lula. And President Lula is not giving in to the war hawks on either side of this conflict. His calls for diplomacy are rational and they are most courageous in a time where common sense seems especially lacking. Many of you may have had a grandmother similar to mine, but my grandmother would always say common sense ain't common. No, it is not. You got a whole bunch of educated fools running things, but they have not a near lick, to quote grandma, not a near lick of common sense. So meanwhile, the US continues to provide billions of dollars worth of weapons. A package of US military aid for Ukraine announced on February 3rd includes rockets with a range twice the distance of the rockets Kyiv now has. The ground-launched small diameter bombs is included in a $2.2 billion US military aid package announced by the Pentagon. A peace is a possibility. We must support Ukraine, but whatever happened to the peace talks? Like, we're not on the peace side of that ledger yet in the United States of America. It is important that we actually do both of those things. And we'll go a long way if countries like the United States rally the international community to continue to push for peace, even in our support for Ukraine over what Russia has done. Russia was wrong all day long, twice on Sunday, but we should be pushing for peace. We should be pushing for the leaders of Russia and Ukraine to have a conversation about how to find the peace. You're gonna get what you're seeking. And so far, they are not seeking peace. So that's why we're not finding it, because nobody's seeking it. So as of yesterday, the number of civilians killed or injured in Ukraine continues to grow. And then we also know we have casualties of Russian descent as well. Number of civilians and casualties injured in Ukraine, we got over 7,000 killed, and 438 of them are children. Over 11,000 people injured, 851 of them are children. There are a lot of innocent people being killed or injured because of this war. A lot of money being poured in on both sides of this. When are we going to have the conversation about diplomacy and peace? And when did peace become taboo? Let's put up what my stunt double had to say about that. Americans are tired of endless wars. Peace should always be the goal. Unfortunately, peace isn't as profitable as war. Let's lead that up. Dan, that's what she said, and she meant that.
I love it. I wish I could retweet it through my screen right now. It's really important, and yeah, shout out Michael Brooks, who like on the left has been really like levitating the idea of Lula and like bringing him to a lot of the American left's attention. But now that he is president of Brazil, he is able to, as a leader of like one of the, I think like the like largest country in South America, he's able to kind of like take a stand from that level of power and say, listen, America is up enriching its own war machine and its own international interests in aiding Ukraine. Ukrainians definitely need like whatever they can get to, fight to defend their territory from Russia, because Putin, it's gonna have to be Putin's decision, willingly or unwillingly, to end this war. But there's so many forces that are saying more weapons, more weapons, more weapons, more weapons, that you need to have equally loud forces also saying, let's find some way for peace. Let's push for peace as hard as we possibly can. How can we pressure Putin to come to the table even more than just using this brute force? Let's see who runs out of missiles first strategy, because that leads to violence, it leads to suffering, and it is already going to be messy to clean up afterwards, but every single day it does just get worse. So I'm very glad that Lula is like one of the first people who's just like kind of pushing for peace as well. So let's hopefully we see more.
Yeah, it's definitely my hope. And it's so good to see an elected official who ran on some things, and now he is implementing the very things that he ran on. And it does take an enormous amount of courage to say that he is not going to thrust his country into this war churn, very much so. Now, and seriously, I mean, if we want peace, we got to do something to work towards it. And the only thing that we and the rest of the world so far, with the exception of Lula, are working towards is just compounding the warlike conditions that the Ukraine is in. Again, Russia is wrong on this front all day long. Another sovereign nation trying to take their stuff should not be doing that. Ukraine is an ally. Okay, we're there for our allies, because if it was us, we want somebody to be there for us. However, comes a point where the war must end. I mean, we should want that to end, and it doesn't seem like that is happening. Another point I like to make in this whole debate is that for every dollar that's spent over there, we need to be spending $2 over here domestically. How is it that, to quote the urban poet Tupac, got money for wars, but we can't feed the poor? The only bipartisan, the most important bipartisan action we get in this Congress is for the war machine. But when it comes to anything else that we need, whether it's a child tax credit or putting people to work or voting rights or labor rights, you name it, they can't seem to come to grips or to agreement with that in a bipartisan way. Shame on these people. Go ahead on President Lula. And you know what? President Lula is not the only one. He is an elected official doing what he said he was gonna do, but we do have lots of thought leaders and spiritual leaders who are standing in the gap, saying that this endless notion of war, that they're fed up about it too. So during a panel discussion about America's involvement in the Ukraine-Russian war, we got Reverend William Barber, Dr. Barber. He joined a panel of experts to discuss a very important and pressing question, and that is, are we going to continue to send tanks over there to the Ukraine? I mean, are we going to continue to do that? That was the question that Reverend Barber had to answer. So Is Biden right to send tanks to the Ukraine? Our panel reacts. And then so you see all of the panelists right there. And there were various opinions on the answer to this question. But Reverend Barber made it very clear that he believes that we risk a downward spiral of death, moving the conversation in a more poignant direction. He leaned on morality. And the basic moral question, the Reverend said, we must ask is not simply whether it's right to send tanks between two wars and in the middle of a Great Depression. Harry Emerson Fosdick wrote a hymn we need to hear now. Russia needs to hear it. America, Ukraine, Germany, and the whole world needs to stop now, hear, and pray. And some of what was in that hymn. God of grace and God of glory, cure your children's warring madness. Bend our pride to your control. Shame our wanton selfish gladness, rich in things and poor in soul. Now, he went on to further state that he believes what the real question is when it comes to this war. And he says, the real question we must ask is, when are we going to turn from death to life? From all of this warring madness. In a nuclear age, the constant escalation of force can lead to nuclear war that kills us all. I mean, that is it right there. Bold and underline, underscore that message in a bottle on every mode of transportation we got. And the spirit of death and war and madness must be challenged. That is it. And over 1 million people have died in this country. But before I get to that, let's put up one other point that the Reverend made. I cannot help but to think that at a rate of 700 people a day, over 16,000 Americans have died from poverty and the lack of public policy since the beginning of this year. I must remember the victims of mass shootings, out of control police violence, and the hundreds of thousands in America alone who've died during this pandemic, not because they caught COVID, but because they did not have access to health care. So the Reverend definitely moving the discussion back to domestic concerns that a whole bunch of American people share the same concerns that the Reverend is laying down. And over 1 million Americans have died. And as another religious leader, Dr. Jamal Bryant, extolled in a sermon that we lost over 1 million people in deaths due to COVID or linked to COVID in some kind of way. And as a nation, we have not even mourned. And this, one other important point, Dan, and I want to bring you in for your comments, should not be lost on any of us about what Reverend Barber had to say. Let's put up this tweet. In a nuclear age, the constant escalation of force can lead to nuclear war that kills us all. This spirit of death and warring madness must be challenged. In other words, can we and the species that depend on our kind to get it right put everybody in the entire ecosystem at peril, meaning all life gone, for WW3? Dan, your thoughts?
He's got a lot that he's saying that makes a lot of sense. Even when we were just talking there about the way that we haven't really mourned how many losses we had over COVID-19, that is like a societal ill. But I also see within that the fact that, hey, we have the political will. Never mind the money, we'll figure out the money later, but we have the political will to send arms to Ukraine, to train Ukrainian troops, to figure out how to weaponize that conflict more and more and more. But let alone is there no political will to, or like less political will to force as peaceful of a conversation as possible. There's also less political will to handle the domestic situations that we need to be handling here, crumbling infrastructure, people who are going hungry and unhoused here today, right now. So it really, hopefully, Reverend Dr. Barber, his message can help us reassess the way we carry ourselves in America, because it's definitely unhealthy.
Yeah, it is. It's unhealthy for us as individuals, our communities, this nation, and the larger world. And I am with you, Dan. If anybody could help get us there, and I definitely say he cannot do this alone. But if any person could be one of the leaders in the movement to help us understand this as Americans and demand that our leaders flex our power, our collective power differently, that would be the one and only Reverend Dr. William Barber. We will be back after this.
The rest of the news media says you should not fight for positive change. If you do, you're not really a reporter or a journalist, because reporters and journalists don't care what happens. I don't agree. That's not written anywhere. That's not a law. It's just a rule that they invented so that reporters didn't actually challenge the people that are in power. Well, we don't agree with that. We think we should challenge the people in power, that actually makes you a better journalist, not a worse one. Here at the Young Turks, we do our best to bring you the most essential news stories of the day, but we can't cover everything in a 2-hour show. And for the rest, I recommend Ground News. Founded by a former NASA scientist, Ground News uses a revolutionary system that analyzes where the news is coming from and gives you complete transparency on the potential biases these sources may have. That way, you can read between the lines of media bias and break free from the corporate media agenda. In arming you with the context and transparency, you'll have everything you need to think critically about the news and build responsible media literacy for yourself and others. With Ground News, you're not just mindlessly consuming the media, you're part of a movement that is working to hold them accountable and get straight to the facts. Break through the filter bubbles, the propaganda, and the bias, and subscribe to Ground News today.
Here's something you may not know. When you deposit your money in a big bank, it doesn't just sit, safe and secure, in a vault. Instead, your money could end up building oil pipelines, mining for coal, or drilling in the Arctic. So if you're concerned about the planet, give your money something good to do. Make the move to green with Aspiration's fossil fuel-free account and join the thousands each week who are switching to save their dollars and save the planet at the same time.
I got pulled in. They told me, hey, listen, Cenk, we're insiders. We are the establishment. People in Washington tell me that they're concerned about your tone. We think that there's a better role for you, and it's not in 6 o'clock. The problem with the mainstream media is they're desperate to get access. They don't challenge the government. They don't challenge power. We're supposed to challenge the government. That's the role of the media.
Components that corrupt our politicians, I think, also corrupt mainstream media. It's really difficult for cable outlets to talk about things like income inequality, wealth inequality, when the advertisers that are funding their shows are the same corporations that want to ensure that the same system continues. People watch digital media or new media, they get a completely different message. They focus on the issues that matter or resonate more with the constituency. We need to know one thing. Is the corporate media incompetent?
Corporate media, I can't hear you. Establishment press, where are you? I can't hear you. But the media's position I am clear on. Everything is pro-war, so everything is just framed that way. In this case, I mean, war is inevitable, right? I mean, the defense contractors should get a couple more $1 trillion. You ready for the stunning results? Only 6% of people say they have a great deal of confidence in the press. Wakey, wakey, okay? Progressives don't like the media either. You know why? It's the corporate media. Corporate media sounds like a conspiracy. Wait. Who owns you? Multi-billion-dollar corporations, public corporations. Right? You have to do corporate media because corporations own us. Yeah, that's how it works. We found the perfect person to lead the army, Allison Hartson.
The establishment media works hand in glove with our corporate legislators, and our corporate legislators work hand in glove with the corporation. And we're going to make it so that it's a decentralized force throughout the country so that we can quickly identify stories, quickly identify troll farms, and go in and neutralize the enemy, and then start building responsible media throughout the country and on every platform available.
And welcome back to the show. We are honored to have the one and only Reverend Dr. William Barber in the house, the architect of what I call the 21st century version of the Poor People's Campaign. The Reverend has done so much. He's written many op-eds. He is an author. He appears on national mainstream TV all the time. He has been on our network before. He is one of the strongest moral voices of our time. Dr. Barber, welcome to Unbossed. So glad to have you here. And you're looking cool with that hat on.
Watch it. You got the glasses, I got the hat.
Hey, we a perfect combination. Now, Red, we gotta have you back because I want our viewers to really get the essence of who you are and what you are working towards. I know our time is a little short, but I wanted to ask you about the Poor People's Campaign and the 21st century version of what you're carrying out, standing very much on the shoulders of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and so many of his contemporaries in a fight to bring poor people together from all walks of life to fight to change their material conditions in this country. You have indicted this country on several occasions, given them examples and ways to make things right. Where are we at this point in time in your view?
Well, certainly, as you know, Senator, we're in a rough place. And let me just say on behalf of my co-chair, the Reverend Dr. Liz Steele Harris, and reminding that it was actually the welfare rights women and Mary Wright Elliman that brought this to Dr. King, and he picked it up. But you know, here we are, 50-some years after that. We got 140 million poor and low-wealth people in this country unnecessarily, 55 million people who make less than a living wage. We had 50 Republicans and 2 Democrats literally vote against 55 million people 2 years ago and say no to them having a wage. I mean, that's an incredible indictment. And I was looking at something the other day, Nina, 330,000 people died during COVID because they didn't have health care, not because of COVID. So one of the things that we're going to be doing, we're having a massive Congress. We're going to be inviting you, by the way, in June. It's going to be called the Moral Poverty Action Congress. And we want you to be one of the persons there, bringing together poor and impacted people, religious leaders, and advocates. But here's the thing, we're going to drill down in what we call death factor. We've decided that we got to put this death factor in front of America. And quickly, what I mean by that is, if we say we're moved by people dying, it's not just police brutality, it's black cops beating up a black man, and white cops killing a black man named Floyd. 700 people die a day from poverty. 700 people a day. That's 250,000 people a year. And I can go on with the stats, but we've got to make the country see that this bad public policy is not only is it violent, it's not benign, it's death dealing. And we got to decide that in America, death is no longer an option.
Yeah.
We got to be the resurrection.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. Yeah, and I look forward to joining you in June. I would be very honored. And in an earlier segment, we did put up a quote from you about, I cannot help to think that it was in a conversation you were having on The Guardian, with The Guardian in a panel about Ukraine, and you raised a moral question about war and the impact of war, both domestically and also internationally, and the impact that it has on us as a people. Reverend, we have got to have you back. We just barely scratched the surface here on Unbossed. I have so many questions for you. I wanted to ask you about Memphis and the police brutality, DeSantis and the rise of open anti-blackness. I mean, he really is channeling the spirits of segregationist governors in a century gone by. He is the new resurrection of that, and he's not the only one. So Reverend, we're gonna get with Charmaine and get you back on the show. I want to thank you so much for the work that you do for each and every one of us, and I look forward to joining you in June. We did do a segment about you and what you had to say right before we brought you on. So sending you so much love and congratulations on all of your great work, you and Reverend Theo Harris and so many others. And that is our time today on Unbossed. We just thank you so much for joining us. And you know what I want you to do about this time? I want you to keep the faith, but more importantly, I want you to keep the fight. Those two things go together. Until next time.